The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Well, today is Bodhidharma Day. And Bodhidharma, as most of us know, was the monk who brought Zen, actually, from India to China. He's our ancestor, first Chinese ancestor. And the teaching we just recited, the Litany of Bodhidharma, is something that was actually part of his, I don't know if he wrote it or he just said it, but he didn't write a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of written teachings attributed to him, but what he wrote was very simple, very straightforward, very profound. And at the beginning of this little thing you just recited, Taiso Eka, his great disciple, who sat out in the snow, they say, cut off his arm, we don't know. But he asks, if someone wants to follow the way of the Buddha, what methods should he use? And Bodhidharma says, since meditation embraces all other methods and practices, I call it the essential one, meditation. Well, when Reverend Hubert translated this text, he explained in his introduction that the term that he translated as meditation, or pure meditation, is more accurately described as looking at what your mind is doing. And this is what Bodhidharma himself did. When he sat facing a wall for 9 years, he was watching his mind. People thought he was strange. The other monks, here's a strange Indian monk, sitting here just looking at a blank wall. What's he doing? Well, he was looking at his mind, watching what his mind was doing. And this is what we're trying to do in our practice. When we're sitting in formal meditation, and when we're going about our daily life, we try to watch what our mind gets up to. It's a very simple little instruction. Just watch your mind. But it's not easy, as we all know, it's not easy to practice because you get distracted, especially in the beginning. When we're sitting in formal meditation, it can be easier, or can seem easier, to watch the mind because we're not doing a whole lot of other things. But we still get distracted by our thoughts. And when we're doing other things, talking, being with people, doing our work, making a decision, thinking about something and all that, trying to figure something out, just living our life, well, it's a lot easier to get distracted. We don't always think, oh, what is my mind doing? We're thinking, what should I have? What should I get for lunch? Here I am in the grocery store. We're not worrying about the mind. We're thinking about vegetables, It's much harder to come back to that. Well, we can do it, It's a matter of practice and commitment. And it's not as hard as it sounds, actually. We just keep trying to commit ourselves to the practice. This is what I do. This is what I'm trying to do. Even if imperfectly, we don't have to be perfect. We probably won't do it perfectly, but any moment we bring our mind back to just being here in this moment, doing what I'm doing, watching the mind also. That is a moment of clarity. Here we are, just doing this right in this moment, whether we're sitting in meditation, whether we're shopping, whether we're talking to somebody on the phone. Oh, pay attention. What am I doing? And what's my mind up to, Well, there are so many ways that people meditate, all kinds of different ways, analytical ways, visualization, mantra recitation, all kinds of things. And there's so many descriptions of how to do it. And our practice is really fairly simple, but we can get awfully confused. Even this little thing, watching the mind, well, what mind are we using to watch the mind? Do I have two minds? One mind watching the other mind, Do we always have to be second-guessing ourselves and thinking about what we're thinking and not just doing something, It sounds very complicated, but actually, when you do it, it's quite simple. Reverend Master Ji had a little rhyme, which she loved to say, and I liked this little rhyme. A centipede was happy, quite, until a toad, in fun, said, "Pray, which leg comes after which?" This worked his mind to such a pitch, he lay distracted in a ditch, considering how to run. because he was thinking about it. He couldn't just walk as he normally would. And the toad did it on purpose. He knew this would happen. He was just poor to be lying in the ditch thinking, what do I do, what do I do? And in fact, he was fine before, because he didn't have to worry about it. He just did it. And I think this is what our master was trying to point out. Don't get embroiled in thinking. Keep it simple. In the rules for meditation, where there's a phrase that some people translate as beyond thinking, thinking beyond thinking, thinking the unthinkable, which she before thought was very quite funny. She's put it as neither trying to think nor trying not to think, which is fairly clear and actually is something you can do. You can do that. Thinking the unthinkable, well, try thinking the unthinkable, or go beyond thinking, but the thinking mind is thinking. But just neither trying to think nor trying not to think, just letting thoughts arise in the mind and letting them pass, like she said, like sitting under a bridge, watching the thoughts come and go. Easier said than done. And this is watching the mind, just watching the thoughts that arise, watching what our mind gets up to, watching what emotions arise, the feelings that arise, the things we find ourselves doing. What am I doing over here, doing this? Just let it go. To be aware of what we're doing, to be aware of what we're thinking. We can just live, we can just do our shopping, we can live our life. We don't have to be constantly thinking about something else, thinking about thinking, because that's very hard. But to be paying attention to what we're doing, and to be paying attention to what the mind is getting up to when it's getting up to something, just to see what we're up to. Paying attention to the mind. Seeing what it does when we're starting to get upset, or we're having a moment of fear or despair, or we really want something that maybe we shouldn't really be looking for. Just to notice that. A moment of joy, happiness, it's not all bad. All the little things that come up in the mind, to see them. And then when we see them, we don't have to cling on to them. Even a moment of joy. Oh, look at that. Just walking out in the garden with the sun shining. Lovely. A moment of joy. And we know it will pass, but we can enjoy it right in this moment. But you can miss that little moment, Or you can get so caught up in some joyful thing, you think this is the best thing ever, and then be sad when it's gone. It's just a little moment of joy, it will go. A little moment of sadness, it will pass. A little moment of despair, it won't last forever. But to see them, so we're not completely pulled off by them. Because the part of us that sees what we're doing isn't caught up in it. When you notice, I'm beginning to get upset, well, that little bit of us, or maybe a big bit of us, is not upset. It's noticing. Oh, be careful. You're starting to get irritated. Oh, be careful. You're starting to push your agenda for something, Just take care. And that helps us to refrain from just blindly acting on impulse, not knowing why, acting on our emotions, We can see them, and we don't have to be kind of hijacked by them. Well, this can all sound a little bit self-involved. Here I am just thinking about my mind, as though we're only concerned about our own thoughts and not about other people. But it's not like that. It doesn't cut us off. Seeing what we're doing, seeing what our agenda might be, seeing where we're getting upset or wanting something, or we have some kind of thing pushing us, to notice that. It doesn't cut us off from other people. On the contrary, actually, it makes us more aware of other people, because we see our little self for what it is. Because it's just our little self. We don't have to be completely falling into the tricks of our own mind. Because the mind is just one of the 6 sense organs. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. It's just a sense organ. It's not me. I am not my mind. This is radical. We are not our mind. All that stuff that the mind thinks, it's just a mind doing what minds do, secreting thoughts, as Dharma puts it. It's just that what minds do. They just secrete thoughts, feelings and all that. We don't have to be completely engulfed in them. We don't have to completely believe them. We don't have to think, this is me. This is this great liberating thing. I am not my mind. And I don't have to be pushed around too much by what it does. It's just a sense organ. And it can be even more prone to misperception than the other ones. You can see something wrong or hear something not quite right. The mind, it makes all kinds of misperceptions, misjudgments, putting two and two together and making six, happens all the time. We can't believe everything our mind tells us. If they say, don't believe everything you think, some people say, don't believe anything you think. Because we filter everything through our own views, our preferences, our opinions, our perceptions, the things we've always thought. In fact, our self-partiality. We filter things through that. I'm the most important thing. What I think, how I feel, what I want, is much more important than, everything else, the self. But the mind is not the reality. It's not us. It's not me. It's just a mind. And this is what we're trying to learn and put into practice, to let go of our clinging to our mind, our self. And when we watch the mind, you watch what it gets up to. You watch it doing these things. And looking at what the mind does, there's no judgment there. This is really important, that we not judge what the mind is doing. We say this over and over again. I'm going to say it again. We just look, not to judge what we see when we look at our mind. And then we can see more clearly. We're not putting obstacles in the way. We're not trying to make it a nice rosy picture. I'm not like that. I'm a nice person. I'm a nice person. How could anybody think I was mean? I'm a nice person. Then we see these little crabby little mean thoughts, a little selfishnesses arise when we look at our mind. We will have that. We don't have to be judgmental about it. We don't have to be self-critical. We don't have to put more obstacles and filters in the way by making judgments about what we see. Just see it, Or not worrying about, I shouldn't be thinking this, I should be thinking something else. Well, it's hard to think about thinking something else, and, it just confuses things. Mind is just a sense organ. It's not me. Then we can see how we create suffering for ourselves and for others with what our own mind does, complaining and grumbling about things, rather than trying to accept them. If we're in pain, if we can accept it and be still with it and feel it in the body, but not feel the anxiety or the resentment or the resistance with our mind, it's a whole lot easier to bear. Much easier to bear anything. Physical pain, mental pain, spiritual pain. If we can simply see it and accept it and not try to push it away or be resentful about it. Getting ourselves into some painful situation, then blaming somebody else or blaming circumstances. Look what you made me do, Or look what's happened to me, the awful thing. Here I am, the victim of circumstance. If we do that, we're kind of missing the lesson that something is trying to teach us. We end up in this painful situation because we brought it on ourselves. If we can take responsibility and see how we brought that about, or at least see our part in it, rather than just blame somebody else, it's immeasurably helpful to see, look what I did. Why did I do that? Oh, I had an agenda here. I wanted this. I didn't want that. Look what I've done. Look how I've managed to be selfish, actually, and create problems, To see how we got ourselves there, to see our motives, our opinions and all that. Habitual patterns of getting annoyed with others, criticizing others, judging people, I would never do that, judging another person. But I might do something else. Dwelling on our mistakes and our shortcomings with that harsh judgment. How could I have done that? Oh, I was so stupid. Oh, that was so awful. Oh, I did this dreadful thing. Maybe years ago, and still dwelling on things that happened years and years ago. Or that happened just 5 minutes ago. Berating ourselves for our imperfections, our mistakes, which we all make. To see that, look what I'm doing it again. It's so much easier for some of us to see our mistakes, our shortcomings, and dwell on them, than to see where we did fine, because we don't notice that so much. There isn't a karmic wake. Our habitual reactions to things. Self-pity, resentment, despair, fear, all those things. There's so many variations, so many ways in which we create suffering for ourselves. And at the bottom of it all is actually self-partiality. Even when we're blaming ourselves, it's a self. I'm blaming myself. Here I am, this awful person. I've done this dreadful thing. Actually, we're pretty much like everybody else. We all do stupid things. We all do good things. We all make mistakes. We all have great virtues, strengths and weaknesses. We all have them, joys and sorrows and all that. We're not that special, have our special hideous karma, And when we look at the mind, when we're watching what the mind gets up to, we can start to see how that self-partiality, or that self-involvement, our likes and our dislikes, our preferences, how they colour our perceptions. When we like somebody, we'll make excuses for them if they make a mistake. If we don't like them, we'll blame them much more likely. If we want to do something, we'll find a way to do it. And if we don't want to do it, there's 100 obstacles. We can't possibly do it because we really don't want to. We do this all the time. Just to look and see, not to blame, not to justify, not to make excuses, just look. Just to look. It's liberating when we can do that. Just look and see what our mind gets up to without making a whole story out of it, without a lot of blame, judgment and all that. Just to see, oh, look at that. It's amazing what our mind gets up to. To do this without judging ourselves, judging other people, to simply accept what we see. Not easy, but possible. And not make it part of me. I am an angry person. I am this kind of person. I am that. It's just a mind. We don't have to completely believe it. And it helps us to accept ourselves as we are, with all our imperfections, shortcomings and all that. Not trying to be perfect, while still trying to do our best. We try to do our best to train as deeply as we can, to let go of creating suffering for ourselves and others. Working on our shortcomings, because we can see them more clearly. We're not judging them, we're not trying to hide away from them, we're not distracting ourselves with something else. Just looking and seeing. Compassion and acceptance, as always. Compassion and acceptance are what really, really help. Because most of us tend to give ourselves a much harder time than we would give another person. To see that, to see, oh boy, I'm being pretty harsh here with another person, but especially with myself. To have compassion for ourselves and for others. Now, I noticed in this book, the Zen Teaching of Bodhidharma, translated by Red Pine, I was looking at it, and there's a little section I noticed where he says, when a great bodhisattva delves deeply into perfect wisdom, watching his mind, he realizes that all the 4 elements and the 5 skandhas are all devoid of a personal self. None of this is me. And he realizes that the activity of his mind has 2 aspects, pure and impure. This is the great bodhisattva. His mind still has those 2 aspects, pure and impure. It's not perfect. And these 2 states are always present. By their very nature, these 2 mental states are always present. And they alternate as cause and effect depending on conditions. The pure mind delighting in good deeds, the impure mind thinking of evil, which means suffering. And those who aren't affected by this impurity are called sages. So we all have this pure and impure aspect. We're not perfect. And if we're not affected by impurity, then you're a wise person. It doesn't mean that our impurity of mind just goes away. It doesn't. Even great bodhisattvas have the impurity of mind. But the difference is they don't act on it. They're not affected by it. They just let it come and go in the mind. And this is why we watch the mind. Not because it's perfect, but because we can then see both the good aspects and the not so good. You also not just look for the bad, difficult aspect, the difficult aspects or the things that create suffering, but also to see, oh, that was okay. I did better with that than I might have done in the past. To see where we're changing and doing better than we did, rather than just giving ourselves a bad time for our mistakes. And in order to see that impurity as well as the purity and not be affected by either, we have to watch the mind. We have to see clearly. As we have in our litany, as Reverend Master Hubert put it, we all have the mind immaculate and the mind stained. It's not two different minds, it's two aspects of the same mind, just our mind. We all have both. Now probably Buddhas don't have selfish thoughts arise, but we're not there yet. We still have our selfish thoughts arise. Just to watch the mind and see what's going on, so we're not pulled off by it. And to see when we're starting to give rise to greed or anger or ignorance, and just let it go without judging it. Oh, look what I'm doing. Maybe not. Just let it go. Let it go. Noticing when we're getting a little bit irritated, or we're clinging onto some view, something I really, really think is the best thing to do, We're not letting it go. Arguing about it. Or we really want something that maybe we shouldn't really have, And when we see that little part of us that is not involved, there's always that little part of us that can observe and see it and not be pulled off into it. Oh, just let it go. Easier said than done sometimes, but when you can see it, we can let it go. If we can't see it, it blindsides us and we end up in a ditch. The part of us that is not involved, that little bit of us, is what's called the one who knows, as Ajahn Chah puts it, the one who knows, the one that sees, that aspect, that part of us that sees, I'm beginning to get upset. Oh, look at this. It sees, sees what's going on and it's not pulled off. This is our mindfulness, our awareness, that sees what our mind is doing and doesn't get pulled off by it, that knows that this is not actually the reality. What our mind is doing, this is not the fundamental thing. Over and over again, Bodhidharma says, our nature is the mind is our nature. There's another bit here. Actually says it over and over. Where is it? Our nature is the mind, and the mind is our nature. This nature is the same as the mind of all Buddhas. Beyond this mind, there's no Buddha anywhere. Deluded people keep looking for the mind somewhere else. They don't realize that their own mind is the Buddha. They keep searching outside, looking for the Buddha somewhere else. This very mind, our everyday mind, is the way, as is said. We're not looking for some special mind. It's so easy to think. It all sounds so obscure, and the special mind that this, the Buddha mind. Where's this Buddha mind? What is it? It's our daily mind, but we're using it with awareness rather than just falling into our deluded views and creating karma. It's not a special different mind, it's just our ordinary everyday mind. But we watch it and we pay attention. It can be the mind immaculate or the mind stained, the mind pure or the mind impure. It's the same mind. Like as Bankhe said, great Maka Bankhe, it said the unborn Buddha mind. It's immaculate, and we can turn it into a fighting spirit or a hungry spirit, hungry ghost. We can turn it into something else, which is his way of saying the mind immaculate, the mind stained. It's not something different, it's not something separate. It's not, this is my evil little mind and there's wonderful Buddha mind somewhere, some Buddha nature, but I have no idea where it is or what it is. I don't know, maybe I don't have one, We all have it, it's just our mind. To watch our little mind, to see what it gets up to, and to trust it, to trust our instincts to good, which is different from wanting something. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between what I think is really good and what I just want. Oh, I think this is just the best thing because I really want it. But to see, actually, maybe that's not such a good idea, What's really best to do here? And when we sit still, when we watch our mind, then we can see, this is what's best. Sitting still and allowing that which is true to manifest. People see it in different ways. Some people hear a voice or something. Some of us just get a sense. Better to do that than this. Well, let's just wait and see. Let's just wait. Maybe the situation will change. Just to see what's best to do here, rather than just blindly rushing off and doing something. To watch the mind in all our circumstances as best we can, coming back to it, whether we're busy, whether we're sitting in meditation, whether we're falling asleep at night, just to come back and just see what's going on in the mind. It's liberating. And this is why Bodhidharma talks about the mind so much. This is the way, this is our key, our very mind, which is not, as I said, some special mind that other people have and I don't. Just our little mind, our brain, our mind, our heart, our body, all of it actually is not all separate little things. It's all just this little being, which isn't really my true nature, but is also part of my true nature. I am part of it. It's not the only, and my little brain is not me. And yet, we're all part of that. It's nothing separate, nothing different. We're all part of it. And I think that's it for the day. Thank you.